I was born in Lebanon in the middle of a brutal civil war. So I spent the first 6, 7 years of my life in different bomb shelters. I started hearing the helicopters that throw bombs coming closer and closer. We started hearing boom, 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 everywhere, everywhere, everywhere.
If you inevitably have to pivot a few times, how many pivots can they endure? If you try a few pivots together and then you quit, well, that's like a huge reset. So I think just the sheer being able to stay together for long enough is really important.
I don't really work like that. And for me, it's about being consciously unbalanced.
I want to highlight the difference between the buyer and the user, where they had huge traction, revenue, lots of people buying, and they've discovered that no one's using.
So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this Founder Coho meetup event. My name is Nancy, and I'm going to be your moderator for tonight. And we've got this amazing panel of amazing women with me today. We'll get to introduce everybody. But before we get started, I want to first tell you a little bit about Founder Coho as a group. So Founder Coho, the name actually stands for Founder Coffee House, named after the Stanford Coffee Coho as well. But Founder Polo is a community that is here to bring founders closer together. So as many of you are founders yourselves, you might know that the journey is really long and difficult. And so it's really important to have the community help each other out and share information. And so we're all about sharing founder stories and fueling founder journeys together. Today, before that as well, I just wanted to call out our amazing organizers, Yi and Jane, the founders, and then as well as our amazing volunteers as well. If you're a volunteer, if you could maybe stand up and then just, show yourselves. Thank you so much. They have been cutting fruit since an hour ago, so they're just amazing. So, and of course, thank you to all of you for being with us on a Friday night. And of course, we have our amazing women founders and leaders with us today as well. And I'm just going to get started with introducing all of them, but I wanted to do this in a slightly interesting way. So I'm going to do something of a two-sided intro, or I made that up myself this morning. A two-sided intro where the first version of the intro is going to be like a LinkedIn version that you might have read about them if you had looked up the event. I'm going to ask them to give me a different version that they would like to share. And in particular, I know a lot of the audience questions had asked about, the stories from your journey that might be really interesting to share, or difficult stories, or really moments that really kind of changed and impacted your career. And so I'll invite you to share one of those journeys that are memorable as well. But I'll start with myself, so I'll make myself the guinea pig. You guys can follow the template. But my name is Nancy, and I am the founder of Hachi AI. So we are an early stage consumer AI company, but been at it for about almost a year now. And before that, I was an engineering director at Stripe, to that at Google as well. So that's my LinkedIn version. But my personal version is, so I was born in China, grew up in New Zealand and Canada, and studied East Coast in the US and lived in France for a while, and 2 kids and 2 cats. And my sort of interesting story is that about 2 years ago, or actually, no, it's been a little bit longer than that now. When I had my second child, a week after I had my kid, I actually fell down the stairs and broke 3 bones in my back. And was pretty much paralyzed for a year. And when that happens, you do a lot of thinking in your life. And one of the things I realized was that, I could have died that day. And life is really short, and what are the things you actually want to do in life, right? What are the regrets, if the other thing happened? And I realized that one of the things I wanted to do was to be a founder, and I had always given myself these excuses I need a green card, have some kids, and maternity leave benefits and things like that. And I think I realized in that moment that tomorrow might never come, and you just gotta go and do the thing. And so I think from that point on, it was just setting all the gears, and it took me that many years to get here. So that's my, the vulnerable version of that story. So anyway, I'll intro Vlada. So Vlada is the co-founder and CEO of Marco Polo, which is a Series C company that built an asynchronous video messaging app that helps people stay better connected with their loved ones. And they have over 4 billion Polo sent, and have been featured in TechCrunch and Vogue. And as a CEO and mom, and I think Vlada's mission for Marco Polo has also been really amazing as well, and just really rounded in mindfulness and joy and purposeful work. So that's her official version, but want to hand it over to Vlada to share her version.
Like I said, I don't think I can follow your story, but I'm originally from Ukraine. I came here in the late 1990, and my journey is through, I got a computer engineering and art degree in college. And then I went to Microsoft, where I met my husband, so I spent 5 years there. And maybe the unofficial part is that everybody thinks most people think it's pretty crazy to start a company with your husband, and we've been doing it for 20 years together in one way or another. And it started with us doing a nonprofit together while we were both at Microsoft, and that's really what got me hooked on seeing how an idea can become a bigger thing, and together we can make it even bigger. And it was so much fun working with them. And then the other thing I'll say that you should know about me is that I have 2 teenage girls. So this is like my fun Friday night out. And we started this company when my oldest one was in my belly, is when we started thinking about it. And so the company officially is 12 years old, but really we've been thinking and talking about it for about 14. Oh, sorry, me too.
And next up, we have Jaclyn. So Jaclyn is a seasoned product leader with experience at some of the most innovative tech companies, including Atlassian, Zoom, Twitch, Meta, and Google, and she actively mentors startups and emerging leaders globally through programs like the Zoogler.co and First Round Fast Track. I'll hand it over to you to give the other version.
As I mentioned, so like many other people here, I'm from Singapore. I came to US for business school, and my intention actually wasn't to stay in the US. I wanted to move to Hong Kong or back to Singapore to do corporate strategy for investment banking. Totally different world. I met my now husband, then boyfriend in business school. He said, stay for 2 years. Let's see how things go. Now he says, nope, can't go. We have got 2 kids. I'm not being a single parent. My story is, I think, one more of like self-growth. Coming here and going to business school, I didn't do very well in business school because I could, get studying done and the test done. For the life of me, I couldn't put up my hand and say to answer in class. I was really very scared. Singapore schools don't work this way. You don't stand up and you don't have to answer things. And so, my husband then boyfriend used to get kind of mad at me because he said, stop whispering the answer to me. It's the right answer. Just put up your hand and say it. And it really took a while of learning how to talk to my husband because he's very good at talking and non-stop, and I have to interrupt him to get my word in, and going to, work life and meetings to learn actually how to speak up. So if like the me back then saw the me now sitting in front of everybody who I don't know with bright lights in my face, they'd be like, no, but that's good about me.
Thank you, Jaclyn. And last but not least, we have Mariane. And Mariane is the founder and managing partner of Women's Founders Bay and Founders Bay, and one of the largest, most active communities of tech female founders in the Bay Area. And before this, Mariane led engineering teams and leading startups like New Relic and MindBody, and has gone through 5 acquisitions and 1 IPO.
Well, this is the official story. The unofficial story is actually I was born in Lebanon in the middle of a brutal civil war. So I spent the first 6-7 years of my life in different bomb shelters. And one night, we were with my family and we started hearing the helicopters that throw bombs coming closer and closer. And then we started hearing them, as the night progressed, we started hearing the bombs being closer and closer to us. So we came downstairs with the neighbors, and then we started hearing boom, 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 everywhere. And then at that moment, we started hugging each other. Like, I was very young, but I still remember that we said our goodbyes to our neighbors. We're like, okay, this is it. We're not going to survive. And then a bomb exploded in our building, but luckily it was like 2 meters away. So half the building fell down, but miraculously, I don't know how we survived that night. So the next day, my mom took us and went to the Canadian embassy, and she refused to leave. She was such a strong woman until they gave us visas, because she said that what is her choice? If she comes back, we're dead. So we left, but then because at that time they were only giving visas to women and children, we had to leave my dad behind. So we came to Canada in New World, and then in Canada we went to the Arabic ghetto. And it means there was a lot of poverty. A lot of the women were not educated at that time. And then a lot of the men were left behind. So we were living in an apartment with like 10 other people. But that experience really shaped my whole life because it really showed me that when women are not empowered, when they are not independent, when they don't have education, they have a very hard time taking care of their children, right? And taking care of society because all they're doing is surviving. So I've dedicated the majority of my career to helping women around me. So when I went into engineering and my last job, I was director of engineering at MindBody before we got acquired. I spent 2 years and a half fighting to get a team of 55% women engineers, which we were able to do. After that experience, what happened is that when we got acquired, I decided to leave and then start a company to help companies hire more women engineers because my philosophy is that if you put in women at a fast-growing startup, her career is going to grow. We're going to get more women as tech executives that are going to mentor more women and, ideally really change the tech industry. But in that journey, I found myself being an entrepreneur and I couldn't find any other women entrepreneur where I went to founder events. I'm like, where are the women? I need a community behind me. So then I decided to start Women Founders Bay. Now we're one of the largest and most active communities of tech female founders. Every week I report on all of the events happening in the Bay Area. And the reason I report on them is so that more women find them and more women go to them. So that's the unofficial story that you don't see on my LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I thank you so much for all of you for submitting questions in the Luma as well. And so we actually took a lot of the questions, and one of the themes that we saw was that a lot of you are either early founders or aspiring founders. And I think we'll start out with a section focusing on thoughts and advice in this for folks who might be in this position. Wanted to maybe just start with an open-ended question for the folks who might be an early founder or an aspiring founder. What are some high-level thoughts or advice you might have for them? Maybe we can go one at a time.
I would say if you're an aspiring founder, stop thinking about it, just do it. Because I think what I realized is that, let's say you are indecisive, right? You're like, okay, should I start this company? Should I not start this company? This debate always happens in your head. So as a result, you don't really learn from it. But then if you actually start it, right, and even if you make the wrong decision, and even if it's like the worst decision that you make, but you will still learn so much from that experience. And then from those learnings, you can then make the next decision. And then it's kind of an iterative loop that over time will allow you to learn so much and accomplish a lot of things. So really, like Nike said, just do it. That's it. Stop thinking about it.
From the different startups and founders that I help mentor, I think one question that comes up a lot is how do I find product market fit? How do I know if people want my product, like it? And there's always the fear that, because I don't have a huge research arm, I can't really go out and find people and do user testing and all that. To that I say, hey, there are lots of free places around, like Reddit, Facebook groups, YouTube, and people like to talk and complain and compare quite a bit. So use those resources. It's really easy to find the right community there, throw an idea, and get that feedback at scale really quickly. Don't let that stop you.
I agree with everything you guys said. And then the things I would add is, I think it's really important to find a community because I think it's much easier to do it when there's people around you who are rallying you on, supporting you and celebrating. So joining a community like this or another one, I think is really important. And then the other thing I would say is I often get asked, how do you come up with an idea for what you want? And, kind of the cheesy answer, but I think is the right answer is find something you're passionate about. And then how do you find something you're passionate about? Actually, the thing that helped me was a quote that I read literally in front, the hardest part of the journey for me was really figuring out what we're going to work on. And there's this quote that I read that said, don't ask the world what it needs, ask yourself what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is more people coming alive. And so looking for something that you will be willing to be doing that kind of gets you excited to do, however small it is, or however insignificant you think it might be, chances are that you can turn it into a business in some way. So just start doing with the community, and then you can find the right product market fit and set yourself up for.
Yeah, I think we'd love to hear sort of what gave you conviction to quit your job and go do things. How long do you spend researching the idea and getting all the signals and feeling ready before you're you just make the leap and do it?
It wasn't a unique case because in this company, we actually had a previous company that we stopped working on it. And so we did that because we knew we were going to start a company. And so it was kind of this idea that we wanted to model to our kids what it's like to work on something that's really meaningful. And we knew we weren't going to be able to do that with this other company. And so we knew we had to make a change. And so for us, it really was a matter of just courage and saying we're going to do it. And then the other thing I would say is it definitely does help to have a supportive partner. somebody who, again, is part of the community building, part of support group, somebody who really values you on and doesn't say no to your crazy ideas, but instead goes along them.
I can't answer this. Haven't done it yet.
So I will talk about Founders Way, how I decided to kind of, start my first company and work on this full time. It's really when I started having an impact and start having traction. So this is an advice for women. Okay, whether we want it or not, and this is a very sad reality, is women still receive less than 2% of the funding. That means that we have to do more with little capital that we have. So I don't necessarily suggest you leave your job to pursue your idea full time, because it's going to take you probably like a year and a half, maybe 2 years to raise that funding. So instead, start working on your idea part-time. Once you see that you're having traction, once you see that people are willing to pay for it, then go all in on it. But make sure that when you do, you have at least a year or two of personal runway so you don't get into trouble later.
Yeah, and I think that was a great segue into the next question as well. And so I think a lot of folks in the group asked about bootstrapping. And so specifically, when you are bootstrapping, especially when, funding is hard to come by these days, like how would you access resources that other VC-backed companies might already have, when you're bootstrapping? Related to that, it's like, how much should you kind of DIY and try to wing it versus, hiring, professional help when you're bootstrapping, especially for things like legal and other things like that?
I think it's really important for you to manage your how much runway you have, right? I would say try to do a lot of the things that you can do yourself. Of course, like legal and all legal. Well, luckily now you have ChatGPT that you can ask a lot of questions. It'll give you probably, pretty fairly good advice. But I would say when you're bootstrapping, what I recommend is just really keeping track of how much money you're spending, how much money you're receiving. But for all the companies that I focus on is trying to make revenue as soon as possible, right? Even if it's like having 10 paying customers, even if it's having like $10 a month from one customer, just try to think about like starting getting revenue in as soon as possible. The things that I would outsource if I were you is, for example, another thing, I wouldn't try to outsource marketing. Okay, right now, you have the greatest tool at your disposition for go-to-market, which is social media. And social media requires absolutely $0. So start building your following. Start like writing about things that you love. I think Vlada gave a really great advice, right? Which is if you're pursuing this, that means you love it. So find other people that you love it and start sharing what you love about that idea. You're going to find your niche. You're going to find an audience. And all of that, the cost of acquisition, because they're your audience, is going to be $0. So yeah, bootstrap by, building your following, grow your marketing, and then just make sure to keep track of everything going out and everything going in when it comes to cash flow.
The things I would add is when we started Marco Polo, I was pregnant with our second kid. We had our first kid already around. And what we did is we budgeted exactly how much money we needed to pay the bills. And then we consulted just enough to pay the bills. And then the rest of the time we spent working on the idea. So just as a way of thinking of like how to set it up structurally, we could do. And then the other thing is I totally agree in terms of keeping track of your expenses and starting to get revenue as soon as possible. Because that's also your clear sign of product market fit, that people are willing to pay for it. So don't be afraid to ask. I think that's another thing that I typically hear women being nervous, asking for people to pay for their product, and don't be afraid to do it. And then the other thing is, part of being in a community is there's a lot of resource sharing. So somebody might be really good at engineering. They can review your code and give you an idea. You might be really good at setting up social media. So there's a lot of cross-referencing and cross-sharing of resources that you can do if you're part of a community.
So for folks who are fundraising, I guess what I think, Mariane, you shared a little bit about the state of funding, especially for women founders, but any kind of observations about the latest trends and any fundraising advice you might have for this group?
All right, latest funding trends. So I've met a ton of women who have raised funding. Sometimes they raise 3 million pre-idea, sometimes it's 1 million post-idea. But I think they all had one thing in common, is that they started building a network of VCs around them very early on. So one of the things that I suggest if you want to fundraise is to not go in the market without a network and say that you're fundraising, because it's going to be very hard for you to get funding. The longer you take to fundraise, the longer you become unfundable, because then VCs start hearing about it, that, hey, why haven't they fundraised in a year? Why haven't they fundraised in a year and a half? So one of the things that I do recommend is now don't say that you're fundraising. Start going to different types of events. Meet VCs, and every time you meet a VC, get a CRM. So get an Excel sheet, put who that VC is, who when you chatted with them, connect with them on LinkedIn with at least 100 to 150 VCs. Once you have that list, once you have a connection, a warm intro to these VCs, then what I saw they did is they said, okay, well, now we're ready to fundraise. We're opening a round. Then they started reaching out to VCs who had the most likelihood of funding them. They got the first term sheet, and then within these few weeks, they went with that term sheet and they created FOMO among other VCs, and that's how they raised their round. So it's a very kind of, ABC process, but this way you make sure to, create buzz, you make sure to close your round. It's not impossible. And then, and another thing also, if you don't have that big network of VC, or if you're still building it, focus on building traction. And if you're building like B2B apps, for example, let's say that you need money to build your app, right? But what you can do is you can get letter of intent from different companies, and that just is enough to show VCs that you have some traction, people are willing to pay for it.
And the only thing I would add is that when you are pitching is like, don't just think about the one thing you're building, but paint the big picture. What is it? What's the industry you're changing? Why is it important to you? Not just don't explain just the one thing you're building, but again, paint the big dream, the big picture.
And I think I see women do that a lot. I said they're very conservative. They're like, oh yeah, I think realistically I can reach like 20 million in 4 years. I'm like, cut this 20 million and tell them how you're going to reach 100 million and how you're going to be the next $1 billion company. Do that all the time. So even though you think, oh, you know what, it's not possible, no, believe that it's possible and that you can do it, and sell them the dream. Don't be humble.
I think moving on, I want to talk about product market fit, this elusive product market fit. Just tips on product market fit in general. And maybe we'll start with you, Jaclyn.
I think it depends on whether you're consumer focused or enterprise focused. Consumer focused, I think the early signs of product market fit, people want to use like what you're building, your app, your piece of software, and then they find it delightful. Because for consumers, the first part is like just grabbing their attention, making the usage is there, and then after that you can think about monetization. With enterprise, it's a different piece though. With enterprise, I think you want to see the initial revenue off the bat. And then with that also, I want to highlight the difference between the buyer and the user. I've spoken to, mentored a couple of founders where they had huge traction, revenue, lots of people buying, and then something happened and they discovered that no one's using. And when no one uses, the enterprises, companies tend to not spend for a very long time because they also want to see people, see the investment in apps and in software coming to fruition. Enterprise side, definitely you want to see the buying happening, but keep a close eye on your usage as well.
All right, this is great advice. I think the thing that I can add is I think the way that you find product market fit is through the iterative process called like agile methodology, use like the MVP building. So when you want to figure out how you find product market fit, right? How you build a product, I would say always start with thinking about like one feature that can solve a very specific problem, and then just build that one feature. And even though it's not the product that you envision, what you can do with that one feature is that you can release it to a small subset of customers. You can start asking them questions and you can send them surveys on what they like and what they don't like. And with that feedback, you can then go and iterate on that product and on that feature. Then you build the next feature and you release it and you get feedback, and then you build this next feature. And this creates really this like cycle where you are not taking so long and you're going in your corner and building your own thing. But while you are building, you're finding product market fit just by going to your customer and asking them questions. And I've led engineering team anywhere from 7 to over 100. And even with 100 engineering team, we did the same thing. We started with this one feature, we released it, we got the feedback, and then we continued building it over time to really like make the product better.
Just to give an example of what both of you guys are saying on the consumer side with Marco Polo, with the Marco Polo consumer version, the first version of the app we did was actually called Joya. It was a way to create like a video photo book. Do you guys remember back in the day you had wallets? We're trying to create that for kids with videos. And so I had 20 moms that I met through different Music Together classes that I just like hand built the app for that family and had them use it. And then I collected feedback and did surveys. And then from that, we realized like that's not enough. They want to be able to send videos to their family members. So then we did the next version. And then at some point we created this other app where again, people were sending videos. And then we realized like, oh no, people are actually turning the camera and talking to each other using this app. And that was the beginning of Marco Polo. It's all like user research is such an important piece. And in our company, we talk a lot about making contact with reality, because you can be like, you guys were both talking about like, being in your head a lot. There's a lot of interesting things that happen here, but that's not reality. The reality is actually what happens when you give the product to the person and start using it. And it doesn't have to be fully built out. It can be prototype. It can be totally band-aided together and start giving you like real data on how.
Just following on to that, like how long did it take you to reach or feel the product market fit?
So we officially incorporated the company in 2012. We iterated 9 different times since we got Marco Polo, and Marco Polo started in 2016. So from 2012 to 2016, 4 years.
I think another big category of questions that from the audience questions is work-life balance. But I think this is how do you prioritize between family commitments and kids and work?
All right. So I'm a single mom of 2 kids. That's another thing that you won't see from my LinkedIn. There's no work-life balance. Like, however I put it, I'm either always working or with my kids. I literally went to pick them up, drop them, fed them, and came here. And now I'm going to go back and do the same thing and start all over again. The reality of it is like moms are superheroes, right? But a few things that I try to do just to keep my mental health is maybe, one night every, 2 weeks, I try to just turn off the phones, turn on everything, and just do an activity that I love and that kind of keeps me sane.
I think different people feel differently about work-life balance. I'll give you like interesting examples. Like for my husband, work-life balance means he has to shut his laptop down by 6 p.m. Otherwise he goes, crazy the next day. Like during the workday, he's pretty intense, very focused. 6 p.m. has to be off. But for me, it's different. I was always managing global teams, like a lot of team members in like Australia, New Zealand, and India, and Poland. And with that being the situation, they're not awake during the day. Their day starts in like our afternoon and evening. And so for me, work-life balance means in the evenings being able to like drive my kids, because I have 2 kids, 2 different genders and different activities. So my husband and I have to split up, driving with a assigned kid to their activity and do calls from there and like grabbing dinner here and there. But it works for me. And at the end of the day, I can still shut down, get stuff done during the day. I get all the errands done. So I think different people, again, different can find what works for you.
I'd like to say that I don't believe in work-life balance. And for me, it's about being consciously unbalanced, because I think that's the best that I could do. So for me, it's really about figuring out what are the things that are non-negotiable, what are the things that are really important to me, and then setting up life around it. Also, for me, part of the reason I started the company that I did is because I wanted to work on something that I'm so passionate about that didn't feel like work. And if that's the case, then you can say that I'm out of balance all the time because I love talking about my company. And so it's really a matter of like, what are the buckets in your life that are really important? So for example, we almost always have family dinner. This is pretty unusual for us not to have family dinner today. So that's like something that for me was like non-negotiable. There's also like, I'm really close to my mom and my parents. So like, there's always a phone call every day, so there's just like, there are certain things I put in place. There's non-negotiable and oftentimes they go on my calendar, but everything else kind of fills in as needed. Sometimes like my husband and I talk about it as like different plans. You want different plants if needed, and sometimes the plant needs a little bit more water, but you just make sure they're all.
I'll just add one thing. I think my superpower is outsourcing the house stuff. I think it's actually very important, and it actually takes time to figure out, the cleaners, the like babysitters, grandma, like everything. But yeah, like ask for help.
I think that's really. I just want to say I'm so glad you said that. I think that's really important advice, and I know for me. Like I grew up an immigrant, it's really hard. It was really hard for me to agree to get like somebody to help clean the house. And I followed my husband for a really long time, and I think it's a mistake. I think if you can afford to, like if you can create a budget, like maybe you don't eat as much, or maybe not so much of getting food. I don't know what it is for you, but it's so important to get help. Like ask for help, or maybe you can train with a friend. But getting help around like these logistical household things, I think is really important.
I think you're bringing a good point about ask for help, and this is a story that happened to me. So a few weeks ago, I was organizing a Web3 founder dinner, okay? And Web3 is very male-dominated, and there's not a lot of parents there. But last minute, all of my babysitting options went through the door, and I found myself not having babysitting. I was organizing this, so what am I going to do? So I brought my 4-year-old and my 8-year-old with me at the dinner, and then the Web3 founders, like the typical Web3 founder, I asked them for help. I'm like, listen, guys, like, I need to eat. I'm very tired. Help me out. And they started playing with the kids. They started helping me. So just ask for, I think the community here is so willing to be open and to help out that you'll find a lot of people around you giving you the help that you need.
People underestimate how good it feels. There's like Stanford research that says that people underestimate how good it feels to help somebody else. And so because we think we're going to be a burden, or I think I'm going to be a burden against them and so on. And so that really keeps me from asking. And I forget how good it feels when I get to help somebody. Like I get to be the hero and help the friend out. So yeah, ask for help. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and I think Jaclyn, I think you actually had a really interesting story about asking for help as well. So I think let's make sure you share that.
I don't know the story, but I think asking for help is like one of my secret underrated superpowers because somehow or other I don't feel bad about asking people for help. I think everybody likes help, and I realize I don't know everything in the world. So whether it's work or it's like family stuff, with work, I never feel insecure or unsure if something comes up because I'm very sure someone has the answer. I just have to ask somewhere. And then even for kids stuff and stuff, like these two ladies like hit the nail on the head. We have no family around, and sometimes it's hard for us to outsource or find things last minute. So my neighbors are the one I depend a lot. Moms dropping their kids off to soccer, and what I realize is, well, the worst is they can say no. And most of the time they do say yes, and they don't really think much about it because it's just like, okay, grab your kid, grab my kid, and let's go. So I would say I meet a lot of people who are afraid to ask for help. I would say don't be afraid, and that's of course easier said than done. You can always ask for help again anonymously. I like to talk about all the social media apps where you can ask for help there. Just ask, even if it's like information about work and trying to get through your workday and things you don't know. Try anonymously first, then put your name to it so that you've read it.
Cool. I think moving into the next section, I think there's a lot of questions about building a personal brand and network. And I think even before you get started, before you start founding a company, like how could you even start, building your personal brand in it today, right? And so, yeah, any tips you would give around building personal brand, and especially for women, I think like what makes us different, or what are sort of our strengths that we can leverage to, stand out and build that narrative as well.
Right. I think I would start with what you mentioned, which is like talk about what you're passionate about. Like, what do you like doing? What are you interested in? And start from there. Because once you have that interest, it's easy to start talking to others about it or inquiring from others, but how they relate to it. And then you can move on to that from there. I know people talk about like writing articles on LinkedIn and building up your social media presence. I think like that's the next step to it. I see that's the next step. First step is really just finding out what you're passionate about, talking to people about it.
I definitely agree with that. Find what you're passionate about. And then the next step is find your goal. Why are you building that personal brand? Are you building your personal brand so that you can build an audience for your startup? Are you building your personal brand because you want to be an influencer? Are you building your personal brand because you want to find a job, right? Once you have a clear goal, the next step would be to find, according to that goal, who are the people or what is the audience that will help you achieve that goal. If it's, for example, you want to build your personal brand because you want to work on your healthcare startup, right? Then your ICP is probably maybe, let's say, doctors. Okay, let's just take an example. Then what you start doing is you start like looking at, okay, well, where does your like ideal customer profile live? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Twitter? Are they on TikTok? And let's say they are on multiple channels. Find what you like, right? Let's say you love to do videos and you love recording videos, then probably you want to use like TikTok or YouTube. Let's say you love writing, long form writing, that's LinkedIn. Let's say you hate writing and you love taking pictures, and Instagram. So find the social media that you will not be hating your life doing, and then find what your ICP really care about, right? A few things that I did when I started my kind of personal branding journey is I looked at who are the top 5 influencers, right, in tech. What are they writing about? Who are their followers, and start interacting with them, then their followers are going to notice, and then slowly over time, you're going to start building your following that way. And another thing that was a game changer for me is that I A/B tested every single thing that I did. What that means, if you try out different types of content and you see the response of that content, once you see something is resonating, then you take that and then you continue refining it and iterating to really find product market fit. There's not different, building a personal brand is no different than building a product. So think about it more as like, this is your product. This is like probably the most powerful thing you'll have, right? As an audience is your personal brand, and iterate over it until you find product market fit, until you find your audience and your people.
Just gonna add something to that. I think the testing piece is really important. Like what I do is one step before that. which is when I'm thinking about like what to do, career, work, and all that, and I'm at a networking like this, events like this, I just share like here's what I'm thinking about, and I'll ask them. Doesn't matter what background they have, but I'll just ask like, how does this resonate? What do you think? And again, to the point that lots of people want to help. When people hear about it, they'll either have a point of view or they start thinking about, oh, who do I know that could help? And that's where I get a lot of introductions to other people who can help me along the way as well.
Okay, I think we're on the last question, which is, what networks or communities have you found to be helpful for you in your journey?
So for me, I think it's a few networks. One is there's a fellowship called Leaders in Tech. Has anybody heard about it before? It's a really wonderful program. It's a 1-year program, and it started by, gosh, I'm blanking on the name, but it's Joe Greenstein and Carol. And I can't remember her last name, but she was the professor of touchy-feely class at Stanford Business School. And it's a class the program is all about connection and basically personal growth. And it's really a wonderful program because you're surrounded, it's only for founders. They also have executive retreats, but the year-long program is for founders. And it's really a great way to get support both your personal growth and also your career. And then I'm also part of, there's a VC-backed moms group that I find really supportive for those of you who are moms or thinking to become moms. It's a Slack group with some events, and it's just nice to be able to vent about kids and partners and what it's like being a woman in tech. I did not know about your community, but now I do, so we'll see. And I'm also part of YPO. It's a young presence organization, and my chapter in particular is mostly founders. And we meet monthly for 3 hours with my like mini group within that chapter to basically cover topics, anything that's related, personal related, but they've really been an incredible support network.
Yeah, for me, it's a company alumni networks. So there's a really big ex-Google network that I'm part of, lots of events, lots of networking and help. There is a executive women in product group on Facebook. And out of that, like a small subset of us actually have come together, and they're sort of like my personal board of directors. We meet like once every 2 weeks. We're on WhatsApp together, and we're really holding each other up through the thick and thins of, anything from founding a business to like just driving your career and then managing the teenagers you have in the house at the same time.
All right, are you ready for my shameless plug?
I want to hear it.
All right. Well, it's Women Founders Day. So we built this community really for one purpose, and that's to empower women founders to grow their startup. So we're extremely active. We have a community of 500 women, 500 amazing startup founders. And then we come together, every week, every month to really support each other. If you are interested in applying or joining, you can go to womenfoundersday.com/apply, and we would love to have you. For the men here, I also run Founders Day. And so shameless plug, we have 32,000 founders and VCs in our network. Every week I report on all the events happening, and I give workshops for founders, and then you can subscribe to the newsletter. It's newsletter.foundersday.com. So join our community. We're here for you. This is the only reason we exist, is that we want you to find support. We want you to find a group that really believes in you and that will be there with you through thick and thin.
All right. Thank you so much for bearing with all my questions. Now I'm going to open it up to the audience. If you have any questions for this group, we'd love to. Yes, I think I'm seeing it through the lens here.
Very selfish question. Yesterday was my 30th birthday. I really want to hear one line that you want to tell. What would be one line on advice?
Start therapy and
I got a divorce when I was 32 years old, and honestly, I didn't think that I was ever going to be okay again. But, I'm okay now. I'm thriving, and I'm finally happy most of the time. So things are going to work out for you no matter what.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a slightly different note. At 30, I was about to get married, starting to think about kids, and very afraid that would stop my career and just derail my entire life. It hasn't. So do what you need to do. Like Mariane said, things are going to work out.
I think for me, one thing I tell myself is I see this founder journey as sometimes if you think about it as a free MBA, it kind of helps. Where you're getting a lot of learning, it's free. Sometimes people even give you money. And so what the learning you get is real life, practical experience. So if you think of it that way, you should just do it.
say something. Earlier the question about the support networks, there's one other one, startups, because I think a lot of you guys from Stanford, there's an incubator called Startups that used to be, you have to be associated with Stanford, but now I think there's no requirement for that. And we went through it even after we raised, I think, our round A, and I found it incredibly helpful. So if you're thinking about it. Say it again?
It's very close to here.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's a really great program. And you don't have to give up your equity to be part of it.
Thanks, yeah, thanks all the speakers and moderator. Yeah, really appreciate your advice and your honest experience. I have a question for each of you. Like, what is the hardest time throughout your professional career, especially if you are doing the startup journey, and then how did you overcome it? I mean, the outcome can be good or bad, or you learn something, but how did you overcome that hardest period of time throughout that journey? I'm asking is, I'm also just quit my full-time job and starting try to build someday, only a few months. I don't know what is waiting for me, so I want to learn someday from you to prepare myself.
I think the hardest time in my founder journey was when I started my first company, Upward Recruiting, I think a year in. And that was, I started like right when all of my new life started. A year in, I was probably working like 100 hours a week. I was, navigating this new life as a single mom. And then I think something very small happened, that maybe one of my clients sent me an angry email. At that point, I really went into like freeze or flight mode. I froze. I couldn't move anymore. I couldn't make a decision. I didn't even want to work on the company. I really burnt out. And then it took me like months to recover from that. But I think what I realized is that your mental health, like when you are building a startup, is so important. And actually, a lot of the companies that fail do not fail because they don't find product market fit. They fail because the startup founder burns out. So make sure to really prioritize your mental health, to build that community around you so that you have people to talk to. Because there's always things that are going to go bad, right? It's inevitable when you're building a startup, but make sure that when things do, you have people you can reach out to, and then you have your way out.
Yeah, so for me, not founded any company, but done quite a few of sort of 0 to 1 within bigger companies. In that situation, you're working a lot, but as Mariane said, the people matter the most. So I've had to, I've been placed with people who we just didn't get along, we just saw things differently, and yet you're brought together because you've been asked to build up this new idea. And the key part for me to getting through that was just finding other people in the room, in the company that backed me up, that supported me, that trusted me, and then together we just started changing the tide of things and all good.
I think tactically the hardest thing for me was making a decision to start the company. And then the next one was picking the idea. But I think when I think about what is actually the hardest about the journey, I think it's your mindset, which is why I think it's so important to pick something you're really passionate about, because that passion is going to get you through the ups and downs. And the other thing is also with the mindset, like with my first VC-backed company, I really had this mentality of like, I need to sacrifice myself to prove that I earned this investment, and I need to set an example for everybody in my company. So I worked 7 days a week, like, 10, 12-hour days. Like I just like totally worked a ton, paid myself non-market rates, like all these things I did. And it was such a bad mindset. Like the mindset is like, I'm doing this because I love doing this. I deserve this thing. They get to invest in my idea, my vision, benefit from it financially eventually. And that does not mean that you have to sacrifice yourself. It does not mean that your mental health has to go or your physical health has to go. So taking care of the things that really matter in your life, your family, your health, like don't sacrifice those things for the company. It will not be worth it. Sorry, one more thing I say, like when I hire people at Marco Polo, one of the things I tell them is that I can't guarantee this is going to be a hugely financially successful company, but what I can tell you is that I care very much for the journey. And so every day we have a choice what kind of mindset we're going to have. Are we going to turn this thing that I don't want to do into a pain in the butt, or are we actually going to turn on some music, do a little dance, or find a friend to do it with, and get through it together? Yeah, I think mindset is the most important.
I actually have a good one. I was trying to get out. Before I founded Cloudshare, I founded a company, a fintech company, called Polo. And I think the hardest part was actually, breaking up with my co-founder and turning the company down. Because I think people don't talk about that enough. Like so many co-founder breakups, and oftentimes it's really emotional and really embarrassing. And at the time too, it was like, I had given myself some timeline to like, okay, at least get the co-founder, get some funding, etc. And I had actually reached my timeline for that, what I had originally set out, and I felt like I had nothing. And so this moment I'm like, do I just quit? And then I said, let me give myself a little bit of time. And so I think I spent a few months, like three or so months, soul searching, and actually ended up to completely kind of pivot my direction. And it was really scary, but then actually ended up meeting my awesome co-founder now was actually cheating right there. And then I think that just changed everything. And so I think Sometimes you think you give yourself a timeline. In it, right? There's no timeline, right? I mean, except for your financial timeline. But if you don't give up, you always get more tries.
Yeah, Mariane, I'm sorry that you're. I've been trying to do my thing. It's been a few years, but I moved across to India. I was in Singapore actually, so I can recognize your accent. And then I moved back here to the Bay Area in 2015. One of the things, since I come from the deep tech enterprise infrastructure side, one of the things that I found really hard is when I moved to India and now I'm coming back here is there are very few women in deep tech. And so, for example, I see a lot of good ideas coming from women, but often fashion tech or like healthcare or mind wellness, and those things don't excite me. I was lucky I met the founders of my previous niche AI startup. It's very deep tech, lots of PhDs. We had a good exit. So I'm comfortable right now, not super comfortable, but like now I'm at a journey. My 4 years are over, where I'm looking for my next thing. But again, like we women don't have the networks to actually like build on our ideas. I'm relying on my current team. But really, maybe the second comment I have is you guys talked a little bit about the founder. In India, I was part of Cell and Bangalore, where we actually had a 6-week program where we took women founders the whole like nitty-gritty details of accounting, finance, marketing, go-to-market, and so on. So if anybody is interested, I don't see such a thing existing. Stanford doesn't have it, Stanford University, like none of the universities are providing like this bootstrap program, which is like the way they did it in time back summer camp, 6 weeks, you stay together, maybe meals together. So all the women founders that are 100, I used to teach in that program, where you're kind of building the whole journey. And when in the last session, when the women came to present their business plan, some of them cried because it was such an emotional journey. It said in front of a large audience, VCs to present their business plan. That was very emotional. Like we need something like this in the Bay Area. I'm observing for the last 8 years now. There's nothing like that.
I would say StartX is probably the closest thing.
Yeah, probably.
In terms of groups for deep tech and infra, I think there are a couple of groups around. So like earlier this year, I went to a dinner organized by Goldman and Dell, the venture arm of Dell, just for women in infra and deep tech. Decibel VC has organized and launched like a women in infra and then deep tech as well, because their VC focuses just on deep tech. So happy to put you in touch with people. And then if you're looking for people to like brainstorm with, I actually joined this like mailing list Substack thing called Next Play, where it's just all early stage startups, and they often like list out people who are just looking to connect with others, just to bounce ideas back and forth. So that could be another option. Very happy to connect you.
I agree with that. We need more women in deep tech, but we did do a breakfast, I think, a month ago called Women in AI, Women in Deep Tech, and we sold out of the breakfast 5 times. So there are women out there. We are trying to change that by bringing more like industry focus. But one of the partnership that I did, and I'm so excited about that, is for women who are looking for, deep tech advice, right? It's very, very hard to right now go and find a co-founder that's as passionate as you. But I made a deal with a company called the Agente, and they build basically an LLM, but they offer their kind of deep tech AI expertise to all of the people in my community for less than K. You can basically build your AI product or deep tech product. So if you are interested, come talk with me, and hopefully, these types of partnerships are going to benefit the community who are looking for more of a deep tech expert.
Oh, yeah, I actually actually the same, like just answer the question like now deep tech, but in general, how you secure your co-founder or business partner or the best team. I just feel like a lot of people have a lot of great ideas. I feel like the best team is it's kind of like something that can really get you started. So I'm just curious, like, do you start by yourself first, or you have one together first? Like, how does that journey get started already?
A lot of people try to, really focus on finding a co-founder, but the reality of it is finding someone who's as passionate as you are about the problem you're solving. But not only that, not only are they as passionate, they're in the same life stage as you. And 3, you work really well together is super hard. So if you can't find a co-founder, don't find a co-founder. Right now, you have the tool, especially with AI, to really be productive, to make whatever you need happen on your own. And then you can always hire like founding either engineers or founding people that you can give them equity to work with you, but they're not necessarily the same as like technical co-founder. And another thing, if you're specifically looking for like engineers, go where the engineer live. Okay, go where they are. So that means go start going to hackathons, start going to dev events, and you're going to meet so many of them. And a lot of them, especially nowadays, are in between jobs. So it's a great time to go and try to convince them to work for you. But they don't need to be your co-founder. You can just give them like the founding engineer title.
Is actually the risk tolerance matching is really important because it's something I didn't think about, but if you have different conviction levels from like a financial perspective or from how much runway you have, it doesn't work very well because if you inevitably have to pivot a few times, how many pivots can they endure? And I think the hardest part is if you try to few pivots together and then one of you quit, well, that's like a huge reset, right? And so I think just the sheer like being able to stay together for long enough to have something is really important, as important as complementary skill set and all of that stuff.
I agree with her. I mean, I am a co-founder with my husband, so I'm in a unique situation. But we did have a previous company with 2 other co-founders. And what I learned from that is that it just takes so much effort to stay aligned with somebody else. It really is like another marriage, which is why we decided not to do that again and just stay married together. Right, it's very efficient. It's not efficient that way. But it really is like we found it to stay in touch with them. It was like regular conversations all the time. And the thing is, like people often say that being a CEO is a lonely job, and so you want to have a co-founder so it's less lonely. But the reality is like it's a lonely job no matter what. And it's important to invest in the community around you. Even with my husband, he was the CEO of our company first and we switched roles. And I remember when he was CEO and he was telling me how hard it is and how lonely he feels, and I was like, whatever, man. I am not here with you. I feel all the same thing, the pressure. I don't know what you're talking about, like basically stop whining. And then we switched and I was like, oh, like it's true. Like the CEO position is really different. And whoever your co-founder is not going to feel the same pressures. And so if you're doing it to release yourself from some pressure, like don't make that the reason. I think there's better reasons for that.
Community person, like so much to help the community and let people provide research. That's something that we have to find people. Anyways, I'll share on my side, but some other folks in that question. So I host venture events. The person I do it with is a friend and client of mine. I was in the venture board. We've known each other 15 years. So it works really well. She knows how to do something, and it just works well because we have the same persona. We communicate extremely well. And we know each other's strengths, and it's very complementary. So I think that's really important to find that. Otherwise, it's heavy. My question to the panel is that I can't really get a question, but are any of you raising? How's been the experience of raising and messaging and finding the right people to support the growth of your company?
Well, I'm not raising either, but I was raising before for my previous company, and I think a lot of lessons learned there was that it's like hiring their boss to some extent, right? And you really want to get to know them before you hire them, and they're going to, you're probably going to be doing meetings with them quite frequently. And what I realized is that it's a little bit like dating in some sense, where in the beginning everything is great and like it's like, oh yeah, everyone looks awesome, it was so great, so helpful. I think then is when the push comes to shove, right? And then the other side comes out. And so I actually find that when you're not raising, actually getting to know people at a deeper level and just see like, because everyone's like, oh, I want to help. How can I help? I think before you're committed, everyone wants to help, but few people actually help, right? Like how many people actually go and make customer intros to you or like go intro the co-founder or whatever it is, right? Like, and you actually quickly realize the difference between people who are like, there's a group of people I think who are there to like have you as their meeting notes that they're going to present to the team later, and they're just like doing market research on, right? And it's very hard to distinguish that from actual great investors who really put in the work and help you out. And so I think it's actually having time when you're not to build those relationships and learn a little bit about who they are is very important, but it's hard. It takes a lot of time as well. And I think the other thing is nowadays everyone's scraping LinkedIn, right? So I think when I left Stripe, I got like over 100 inbound LinkedIn requests, and I was so flattered. I'm like, oh, I'm so great. Like everyone thinks I'm awesome. And then over time I realized like, hey, it's not necessarily a great thing, right? If you just went and talked to all of them and then like 2 weeks later your idea changes or something, like that's not a great thing.
So I think it's just understanding what the nature of the relationship is and trying to build like real human connection before taking anyone's money, right? And I think even then, I think I've heard a lot of stories about crazy stuff that happened, when the term sheets are on the table or afterwards, right? So I think building that baseline rapport is super important, and I think. And then nowadays, there's so much about like run the process, like talk to 100 people in 2 weeks, and then like fish the term sheet. I feel like the precept to that is you have to at least like them a little bit, right? It's not just about who gave you the best term sheet. It's like, yeah, do you want to work with this person for the next X number of years?
I'm not fundraising right now. And then I really agree with the advice everybody's given around building up a network. Like we were very strategic in who we want to be on our board. And so we sort of targeted people ahead of time and made friends with them. Like started sharing our ideas and kind of got them excited. Because for us, we're very much a purpose-driven company. Our purpose, again, is to help people feel close. And so it was important for us that the board was going to be representative of that. And so we interviewed them as much as they were interviewing us. And then the other thing I would recommend if you are in a position, like I would definitely reference Jeff. So talk to other founders who've had that investor on your board and ask them questions about what it was like when things weren't going well. Because like you said, it's easy to say, I'm going to call and every investor I know says, I want to be the first phone call free when things go tough. And then find out from the founders were they actually the first person they called when things went tough. So cross-reference the information from the real people, real talk.
There's a lot of tips out there, so I'm not going to go in all of them, but one advice that I give for founders who are fundraising is to start like this maybe quarterly newsletter where even, let's say you talk to investors and they're not interested, it's a no. A no can always be turned into maybe just not right now. So start a newsletter, put all the investors there that you've been talking about, and then just send them updates and exciting updates. And you never know, maybe one update will catch their eye and then they're going to turn into a investor in your company. Honestly, I feel like I'm taking a risk every day, right? Just by continuing building my company. Because like, what is the alternative, right? If you are not building your company, that means you have a stable 9-to-5 job, you always have revenue coming in, right? But when you're building your company, especially at the early stage, you never know when your next paycheck is going to come from, right? You never know if you're going to be able to fundraise more later on. So every day being an entrepreneur is a risk. And a lot of people are saying, okay, everybody can be an entrepreneur. But no, if you are not able to weather that risk, if you're not able to go through extreme highs and extreme low, then maybe being an entrepreneur is not good for you. But I think it comes back to what everybody is saying. If you have something that you're so passionate about, that you believe in your core can make an impact. And for me, I'm taking that risk every day because I truly believe that now is the time for the tech industry to change and to be more diverse. And I truly believe that it's time for women to shine, right? So this passion of mine is stronger than this, the scariness that I feel about continuing being an entrepreneur. So if you have something that you're so passionate about and that you really want to make an impact in the world or make an impact for people around you, then it's going to kind of counter effect that feeling of being scared of what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and I think one part is really understanding your finances. I think before I quit, I had so much fear, like, Bay Area is so expensive, and I could probably only survive like 6 months. And I think it was just this. I didn't even look at the numbers. I was like, I just assumed that I need a lot of money. And I think once I kind of spreadsheeted it and like really looked at, and then I asked my husband, like, please don't quit your job and please give me some runway. But I think it's like when you actually like project the numbers, you actually, at least for me, I realized like, we have enough saved, and like, okay, maybe I have to like sell all my stock and do something. But I think, I think I was in an okay spot financially. I think it's very different when I've met other founders who are like literally living paycheck to paycheck, and I'm like, that's like way too much. I couldn't do that, right? But I think for me, once I saw the numbers, for me, it was okay. So I think that's one part is actually, do you really know how much runway you have? I think the other part is, I think this feeling of like, is my idea good enough? Is it going to take me to get to PMF? And I just think like everyone says it takes longer than you think, right? But I think to me, that's why I think to me this is a free MBA. Like if you think about it as education, somehow you're more willing to do it and pay a lot of money to do it. But when it's free MBA, suddenly it's more terrifying. So I think that thinking about it, reframing it as education helped me like lessen the bar. I think as an Asian, I'm always like, oh, studying is always great, but then somehow, founding a company is way more terrifying.
I think there's the cultural context behind it as well. Like, yes, the financials is something, but like I said, like I'm from Singapore, people don't quit their jobs in Singapore. You want a steady job, you want to get married, you want to buy your house, you have your kids, and retire at some point. And so moving here into the Bay Area and seeing like so many people just, I quit, I'll live paycheck to paycheck, I'll stay in like a dorm room with everybody else. It's quite scary to me. And so I've never taken that step to like quit my job and do the whole thing. But what you can do is start exploring ideas on the side. And what I found is that there are lots of people in tech who are like, I can't say they're investing, but they are interested in doing things on the side as well, because of family reasons, because of other reasons, while still holding down their full-time job. And I feel like to a lot of the discussions here, those are the folks who have like sort of the same mentality as you in terms of risk averseness, in terms of timelines, and those are the people you can work with to try and get your idea out. Or I was listening to a podcast on my way here, listening to the founder of Replit, and how, without a technical background, you can just start using Replit to start coding and then, getting something coded up. And for areas that Replit can't do, they have a bounty board. So you can go hire a developer just to fix and tweak the pieces. So I think there are lots of different ways you can test out your idea while still maintaining some stability if that's what you're comfortable with risk-wise.
The thing I would add is there's a few experiences that give me courage. One is I was at Microsoft for 5 years, and then we tried starting a company, and then I was my one of my husband was at business school, and so I was not working. He was in business school, so our money was just depleting. And at one point, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to get a job. And so back to Microsoft, and I got higher salary, and that was a really good data point for me. That actually I can almost always go back to a corporate job, and chances are I'll get paid more than I did last time. So I think having that experience gave me courage to okay, I have some sort of safety net. And yes, the markets, maybe I won't get the perfect job, but I think I'll be able to get a job. And then the second thing that happened was when I came to US, I had no money. And so I was surviving that. And then again, when we started the company, seeing that I could do it with my husband, really manage our budget and live pretty cheaply, also gave me the courage that I don't need that much actually to make it. So if there is a gap and I can, make it last longer, I will be okay. So it's financials, that I can go back to the job. And the third thing that's helpful for me with risk taking is surrounding myself with people, like you were saying, who are also willing to take the risk. Because I lived in Kansas for a while, but I first moved from UK and lived in Kansas. And I think starting a company somewhere where there is a mentality that failure is a good thing, hard. So for me, being in the Bay Area, it's you failing a startup, chances are when you apply for a job somewhere else, it's going to be seen as an asset. And so again, it's going to get you a better job somewhere. It's going to get a better job. So being surrounded with people and seeing that whatever you do is not just an MBA, is actually an asset is another way to think about it.
Thank you also.
Yeah, YPO has been a really amazing organization for me. So there are requirements to get in. So if you're early stage, it's probably not the right fit yet. But the thing that I love about it is, at least in my chapter, it's mostly people who are founders. And so I was really looking for a community. Let me back up. Basically, having a family at the same time, starting a family at the same time, starting a company meant that was my life. I really had very little time for anything else, and I really wanted to find a way to have friendships and have community in a very time efficient way. As you can see, time efficiency is something I look forward to in marriage and founding experiences, but also in my friendships. And so YPO was something that was recommended to me. And I actually was turning it away for a long time because there was a cost associated with it. And I thought I wasn't going to have time for it. I need to stay focused on the family and the company. And finally, this person convinced me to join. And the thing that's so life-changing for me about YPO is you really gives you access to a global network of other founders and other people who are running companies and having the same kind of pressure and stress points as you do. And so within my chapter, that group is specifically tech, founders, many tech founders. And then every month we meet, my small group meets for 3 to 4 hours to discuss anything that's top of mind for us. It could be anything that's going on with our spouses, our kids, our family, our parents and so on, or it could be financial crisis or pandemic or a war starting or new presidency. What does it mean for our taxes? So it's really interesting conversations. And the power of YPO is really that it's vulnerable conversations. It's really we actually interview people for authenticity to see how deep they're willing to go in the conversations. And all the conversations are confidential. There's a lot of, it's a pretty strict policy. And then there's also fun events. So we did like a Navy SEAL event. So there's like these like serious monthly things that you do with your small group where you really go deep. And then there's fun things throughout the year. Like we're going to Alaska in February and getting to do lots of like behind the scenes kind of things. That
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to wrap up here. Just want to give a big round of applause for all of our and I think we also, please feel free to stay and mingle and help yourself to food. I believe there's cake. I hope there's still some left. But yeah, thank you so much for coming.